All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are holding the mechanical monthly update and Q&A for Evolve MEP customers. We've got on the call today our amazing customer success team with Alex Siebert and Director Amber Zinke. We also have Andrew Somerville, Adam Heon, and Jason Earl, your project and product managers. And today we are going to get it started with Alex Siebert.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to share my screen here real quick. So I'm basically going to be going through, a lot of people have questions about how to start a project within Foresight and have that linked within Revit. So I'm going to kind of walk everyone through exactly how that goes. And then, I'll help answer any questions as we go through it. So this is the main page that you're going to see when you log into Foresight. And for setting up projects, it's typically best for the admin to set it up. Of course, some people, like company members, can just log into Revit and create their own project. But then it gets to a point where that gets a little messy within the Foresight portal. So I'm just going to show you a nice and clean way to do it and how to assign company members to projects. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to come over here to this projects tab. You're going to click down, and then you're actually going to go through and actually create a project. So what you're going to want to do is go over here, just like you would for creating a new user. You're going to give that project a title. I'll call it Alex's project. And then assign an admin. I'm going to assign myself. Of course, you can also assign multiple admins to this project as well. We'll just give them the ability to, change the name of the project, change certain properties of the project that normal users will not be able to. So once I create this project, I'm going to search for it here real quick. So to add people to this project, you're basically going to want to click on the actual project name, and then you can actually go to project members and invite users this way. The reason why just want to take a step back real quick and say the reason why I'm doing this is because sometimes people will assign just a bunch of admins because they don't know how to assign project members to a project. So I just kind of wanted to walk through this of how to invite company members to a certain project. Once they're invited and they accept, because they're going to get an email much like you would for inviting a company member. So once they accept that project invite, they're basically going to show up here on this list. And then when they open up Revit, they're going to have the ability to have a drop-down menu. Basically, it's going to walk them through, which Foresight project do you want to link this to within the portal. That will basically allow you to have all company members on the project that you want. Some of our customers are just setting up one project because they aren't going to actually use the design module that's part of the portal. So if you aren't going to use the design module, you can just set up one project, assign everyone to that project, and then it's kind of a one-time setup per Revit project. But from there, of course, you can have people assigned, and then they can choose that as opposed to setting up multiple. So that's kind of a quick walkthrough of how to assign project members instead of just having a bunch of project admins or a bunch of projects. Let me know if you have any questions about this or, anything about projects or the design module, and I will do my best to help. So that's about it for that. And then I'm going to kick it over to Amber to kind of go through some common ticket questions that we have.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Let me share my screen. All right, perfect. So we're going to go through a few different topics, some frequently asked support tickets, and then also just some topics that we get frequently asked as well. So first, the biggest one that I get asked is, what does project versus user settings mean, or what even that impacts? So a lot of our features themselves will be either project or user based. So looking at that, let's go to our ITM hangers. So typically a lot of the features when we bring up our grid, so the feature itself, you're going to see the word project in front of it. So that means that anything that you have defined within your grid here, that will be saved to the Revit file itself. So anybody who has access to that file, if they have an Evolve license, they'll see these same settings. So always keep in mind when anytime you see the word project, that is going to be impacting the project as a whole. There is also user settings as well. So user settings typically will say user. So if I go into the renumber, you're going to see that word user here. So that is going to be just impacting yourself. So when you're doing that, keep in mind that you might want to share those settings with your coworkers. So being able to pass that information off. So you're going to keep it pretty core. There's multiple different ways to do that, but one way you can do that is exporting them out. And then your coworker can easily import them in. The other big user settings that you're going to see is your element filters. I love this feature. If you do not feel comfortable with element filter, I definitely recommend getting comfortable with element filter because it is a very nice feature. So these features in here, so the rules that you define within this feature itself, these are also going to be user-based. So if you see any of your coworkers having some pretty cool filters, definitely ask them to export and import them out. So easily coming in here, selecting any of the filters that they want, coming out to your export filter, and then you can go in and just say import in. So again, the user ones are going to be just for you and your workstation versus the project are going to be per that project file itself. You can definitely bake a lot of those settings within your template file, or you can also export and import in as well. So those are going to be pretty consistent throughout our software, is the fact that you can easily export and import in. So if you have typical settings throughout your different projects, but maybe some things are a little bit different, you might want to almost create a folder of all the different projects that you're working on and have those kind of running list of different settings that you can easily just import in when you experience that similar settings for the next time. But I definitely recommend more so baking those into your template files and this adjusting when you need to. But again, throughout the software, that's kind of like the biggest indicator is just seeing the word project or user there. So if you're confused why something is impacting everybody versus just you, that's kind of the first thing to look for. So moving on there, the next thing that we'll go through is points. So I get a lot of questions about different things with points. The biggest thing is with ITM content, you're not necessarily able to see the point itself. Sometimes people want to create those PDF drawings of all the points within their project, and they're pretty frustrated that they can't see the points. So there is a workaround for it. There's a few different ways you could do this, but I'll show you one way. So I'm actually going to throw in some hangers here just so we can see what's going on here. All right. So going into our point manager, all of that content itself will have known locations associated with it. So if you don't physically want to see the point, perfect. All you have to do is export it out and you're good to go. But I know a lot of people do want to see that kind of PDF of the actual points themselves. So what you can do is export these points out and import them back in. Again, it's a little bit of a kind of a workaround currently, but that's something that you can do if need be. So I'm going to select these here. I'll just do my Clevis hangers. I'm going to export out the points. I'll just date this here. Then I'm going to open up that file. So you can see when I open up the file, that name right here. So I'm going to first adjust that naming. Again, the name of the point, that can be whatever your standards are. I'm going to save this file, close out, and I'm going to import that back in. So to import those points back in, I'm going to browse out to that location, hit open, and specify my point type. So I'll just say layout points. You can create different types as well there. So if you wanted to create a type for like imported points or imported ITM points, you could definitely do that as well, just for being able to kind of filter and see how things are going there. We're gonna hit OK. Points were successfully imported. Perfect. So now you can actually physically see those points. One thing is just to keep in mind the fact that there would be considered to be duplicate instances. So when exporting out the points, just make sure that you're selecting the points that you imported in or being able to export out if need be, or just select one or the other. So one thing to keep in mind there. So that's a little bit of a workaround to be able to see any of the ITM points themselves. Next is annotations. So there's a good amount of different questions with annotations. So first one, well, let me bring my panel back up there. Okay, so the first one with annotations is how do I import in some of those custom tags that I want to have within my ribbon here? And that would be going to your drop down here and going to this tags right here. So you can even see with our tags right here, it says create custom annotation tags. So let's select that. Keep in mind, these also are going to be user settings here too. So this is going to be impacting just you. So if it's going to make your life a lot easier to bring in additional tags, definitely set this up. So looking at it, we have our order, we have our displayed name. So maybe I want to modify that. So we'll do weld for that one. Your family name here, these two right here will be pulled based on what you map out for your family path here. So for your family path, you're just going to map into where that tag is located. So you can map out to wherever you have that tag that you need it to be. So that could be definitely something that, not even an evolve annotation or anything like that. Maybe you've created a tag that you just want to be able to use. You can definitely do that too. Your image path, so you can also specify image for it as well, or your placement here, you can also specify that. So if you need to make any modifications to it, so for your placement, maybe you want to do below center, you can do that and adjust your left, right, or your up and down and specify if you want a leader or not. So now when you want to do that, we'll go to here, choose a drop down. This will list out everyone. You can have about 25 custom tags within there. So definitely keep that in mind. And also keep in mind, because they are user, it's going to be just based on what your needs are. So we'll say, well, specify that, and there you go. Annotations, I definitely recommend being able to play around with your element filter. This is going to make your life a lot easier when it comes to being able to select what you need to select and then do a mass selection and then throw in your tags that way. So we can do kind of one of that. It's going to look a little crazy, but that's okay. So we'll say select a service. I could select my entire service here and throw on my multi here. Looks insane, but I definitely recommend creating different element filters in those situations to find and select very specific elements that you're needing. If you're doing the classic, selecting an element, doing the control feature or control key to select multiple, please never do that. Create an element filter for that situation. I'm going to select all these tags and delete them. Also, another fun thing that some people kind of aren't aware of with annotations is this little asterisk here. So definitely want to throw that out there. If you ever see a tool that has an asterisk by it, please hover over it and see what that hold down shift command allows you to do, because it will be super helpful to kind of play around with it. So with this, we can do hold down shift command. So with this, if I hold down shift, it'll allow me to select the placement of my tag itself. So by default, it will be based on the settings themselves within your annotation settings. But if you do the hold down shift command, it'll allow you to have a little bit more control of your placement. So if things are really tight in a scenario, it might be helpful to be able to specify your location itself. When it comes to the annotation settings, I'll go into annotation settings. I want to point out here that looking at the different settings here, again, I have this sorted and filtered by my tag type and category. You can sort out however you'd like. These settings here are going to be project settings. But you're going to see we have that family name and family type here and that family path here. So if you ever have any kind of warnings or weird things like that for your annotations, I would definitely recommend making sure that your file path is mapped properly. So it's indicating that. The file path itself as well. So if you don't have a tag already loaded within the project, this file path will map out to that location and bring in that tag itself. So one, make sure that all of your families are loaded in if you're going to be utilizing any kind of content on the family side. So if you're wanting to use that multi-service hangers, or if you're going to be placing sleeves or anything like that, make sure those families are actually loaded into your project as well, because that sometimes can cause some things if you don't have the content actually loaded within the project itself. Just keep in mind that the family browser itself is not a list of the content that's actually physically within your project, but it is all the content that could be. So just make sure that you need to load in any of the content from the family browser itself. The last thing that I'll go over today is our selection configuration. So this is a very handy tool. There's a lot of different things that will be helpful in this scenario. Let's say that you're defining your spool drawings. So for whatever reason, let's say that one of your elements is not typical when it comes to your ITM or a pipe or a duct or something like that. Maybe you want to, for whatever reason, include a furniture. You can specify that within your selection configuration. So you can uncheck your category, and I could type in my furniture here and then select that. So now that I've selected that, now I'm also able to include furniture within my spool drawings. So your selection configuration allows you to identify the elements that you want to be able to be impacted by that element itself. So you can see we have create location, define package, define spool, your quick tools, your MVP rotate, and so on and so forth. So this would be helpful. Maybe you're strictly ITM and you don't want your elements to work or your features to work with families. For whatever reason, you could also uncheck that as well. So maybe just to almost give yourself a fair warning, or make it where it's not possible, you can definitely uncheck those as well and just keep your ITM content here. So that's one thing to definitely look at as well if you're trying to create your spooled elements and you're realizing, hey, I can't select a thing I need to select to include within my spool. You can definitely come in here and set that up here. And again, these are going to be those project configurations. So also keep that in mind when you turn off your family content within your defined spool. That's also going to impact your entire company that's working on the project itself. So those are some commonly asked questions or different support cases that we do get. If there's any questions, we can definitely dive into it. But if not, I'm going to pass it on to Jason.
Thanks, Amber.
Mhm.
All right, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about renumbering and some of the new enhancements that we have, and kind of go over how they work, and a couple other nuances about renumbering. And so if anybody has any questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A, and we'll go through them. All right, so I have a view here that I set up where I pretty much isolated one system just to make it easier for when we show our tags. I've got some settings for my renumbering. We'll take a look at that in a minute. But right now I'm just going to run the renumber tool. And in this case, I'm going to use renumber elements. I could do renumber elements by service if I wanted. All of these are in the same service. But we're just going to keep it on renumber elements. What we're focusing on here is these two options, select run to specify order and select element to specify order. The first one we'll go over here is select run to specify order. And as I go into this, if you've used define spool run before, it's very similar to that one. So I'm going to hit OK here. And first we'll check our message prompt here in the bottom left. It's telling me to select the elements that I want to renumber. So since I've isolated everything I'm going to number, I'll just go ahead and select everything and click finish. All right, and let's see what it's asking me now. It says select an element to define the start of the run. All right, I'm going to choose to start with this one. And then it's going to ask me select an element to define the next endpoint of the run. So let's say I want to number, this is my main, and I want to number my main in order, and then I'll work on my branches. So I'm going to select the end of my main run here. And now that those are kind of queued for numbering, they disappear from view. And I get a new prompt and it says select an element to define the next endpoint of the run. So I've got this branch coming off. So let's say I want to number that next. And then I want to number, let's say we want to number this branch, and then we'll come back and number this branch. So I'm going to select the end of this branch here. And then I'm going to select the end of this branch here. And now finally, everything's going to number. So kind of what we're doing with this is we're getting a little finer control over how our numbers are applied and what order they're in. So coming down here and looking at our tags that I have on for this view to help us illustrate, we've got 1 starting here, coming down, they increment up, 7, 15, going along. All right, and so we see we've come through this T here, and you'll notice coming off the next number is not 26. And so we keep going up down here. And so at the end of our main run here, we end at 31. And then I selected this one next. And so that starts at 32 and I end at 35. And then I get to see coming over here to 49 and then starting back again at 50 and numbering along this run. And that is renumber with select run to specify order. All right, I'm going to undo that one. And we'll run the command again. And so now I've got this other option here, select element to specify order. This one is going to take the longest to do, but it gives you the finest control. All right, so I'm seeing a question here about the renumbering. When the renumbering, what if you have breaks in the run? So if that's the case, the select run to specify order, you're going to have an issue there. So I will cause that to happen, and we can look at that to help illustrate. So let's run the tool again. I'll keep it on select run to specify order. And long story short, you're going to get an error because they're not connected. So if I select here, I get the error here. So elements that were not in the selected run have been hidden. Okay, so that's kind of a warning. So since I selected this, everything there's not connected, and so it's been hidden. So I can only select stuff that's connected in this case. So let's back up here. Mark that as answered. And we'll kind of go back. What you can do if they're not connected, there's a couple things you could do. You could do renumber, you could hit select run to specify order. And then let's say select everything. And since some of the things weren't in the run, hit OK. I can select this part. All right, and then I can run the command again and select all these. So that's one option. The other option you have is to renumber and then do the select element to specify order. So like I said before, this one's going to take a fair bit longer. And for piping, this may not make a lot of sense. For duct, it would probably make more sense. I believe that's where the request for this one came from. But I'm going to hit OK. It's going to ask me to select what I want. I'm going to hit finish. And so now I'm just going to click one by one what I want to renumber. And we're going to go that in order. And so if I had things that weren't connected here, I could keep going. I missed one there. It's out of order, but doesn't matter for this. And now I can keep going and have them numbering as I go. I'm not going to click through all these. In this command, I don't have a finish, but it tells me press escape to cancel /n. So I'm going to hit escape. And let's see. Finish. Okay, it's probably because I have to number all the ones I selected. So let's select fewer elements. All right, so once I've selected everything for numbering, it'll automatically renumber, and that's how you'll finish the command there. So that, in a nutshell, is these two options on select run to specify order, and then select element to specify order. These are going to work with any three of these. These are just kind of the renumber rules, or how it's going to apply the numbers. We could check both of them. And so we could select a run, and then we could, within that run, we could select which elements, the order that we want them. All right, so coming into some more kind of nuances with renumber, we're going to go into the configuration. So one of the things we've added pretty recently here is this common numbering identical part determination. And so this has grown. So this works with families and ITM parts. But there's a little kind of special case of the renumber rules that I want to work with ITM parts, and I don't want, I'm not worried about families. So I don't care about parameters, and I'm not using custom determination. I only want to compare, say, length for numbering. So I want all my pieces of duct or all my pieces of pipe that are the same length to have the same number. And then that's my uniqueness or common numbering determination. So what I would do is in here, ITM settings, we could check these or not. You'll notice length is not in here. So these are ones that you can ignore. It's kind of the inverse of a lot of things, but in this case, we wouldn't need to. So you can ignore, say, spool or status. Let's say you wanted to ignore service. So let's say you had, hot water and cold water, and it's going to be the same number, whether it's hot or cold, if it's the same length pipe. And so we might ignore that. But long story short, if you're only considering ITM properties in a renumber rule, you're going to need to type in something like NA here in by parameters. What this does is it tells us that, hey, we're not checking any parameters and we're only checking ITM settings. Kind of a little more detail on this. Essentially what we're putting here is a non parameter. So this could be anything you want. It could say not a parameter. It just needs to not be a parameter. You just have to type something in there, and then it will compare only the ITMs. All right, so that's ITM only and ITM specific common numbering. Looks like we got a couple questions here. And Chris, I'll jump back to the importing a CSV for hanger points at the end. Let's see, that one's done. Okay, so Michael asked, on specify order, is there a way to not have the joints be renumbered, or do you have to filter those out? What you would want to do is filter those out from your renumber configuration. In here in my element filter, I kept it just very generic. So if we wanted to filter that out, say for our welds, let's see, the family name has weld. So we can filter that out really quick. We'll go family name. Let's say does not contain weld. We'll hit apply. We'll hit OK. I'm just going to select these to show the run. And let's do renumber. I'm going to do select run to specify order. And I'm going to start over here. We'll go down to here. Let's say we wanted to number this one. I'll come back to this one and then this one. And so it's going to say it can't find renumber rules for these, and weld is in there. And so it's only going to number now what's in my renumber rule. So you'll notice this has weld in it, so it didn't do that. So my rule wasn't specific enough to only exclude welds. It also excluded this elbow. So you'll just kind of have to get your filter, your element filter set up correctly to do that. But you certainly can do it. All right, we got a question from Chris here. So with 6.2, the common number was not working unless I placed a parameter to compare. So I used service type. I think what you're, correct me if I'm wrong. So I think that's what we were talking about here, where there just needs to be a parameter in here that is not a valid parameter. Well, not a parameter. There just needs to be some value here that's not actually a parameter. Okay, so last thing here about renumbering that I wanted to go over is this column here, single numbering. So this is a new one, I believe, to 6.2. What this is used for, and you can hover over for the tooltip, but essentially what it does when you check this box for a rule, whatever that rule applies to, if it already has a number in the parameter that we're writing to, in this case, item number, it will not renumber that element. What does that mean in practical terms? Why would you use that? Well, let's say you've got your pipe, it's on hangers, and you number your hangers and you send that out first. And that's a separate kind of operation from your spooling. So you've numbered your hangers, but you didn't number all your pipe work. But now you're going back and you're spooling everything. And so when you create spools, you include the hangers in the spools. But you don't want to renumber the hangers because you've already numbered them. Checking single numbering on your hanger rule will prevent those hangers from getting renumbered. And that's kind of why, an example of how you might use single numbering. All right. That's everything that I wanted to talk about for renumber. I'll answer another question here from Chris. He says, when importing a .csv file to see the hanger points, can you apply different families based on the hanger ITM name? So to that, I'll just say you can't. When you import points, you're going to have to choose a type. So if you did want to do that, what you would need to do is export them by whatever the rule is there. So based on the hanger name, I think, let's see, I don't have any points visible in this one. Let's see, do I have hangers in here? Let's look again. Okay, so I guess how you would do that, right? So we can go by, let's group by host. So this is the hanger name. So I would just want to export by that, and I would just have more CSVs. So I could export this one as round strap hanger, and then export this one, then export that one, and then import them back one at a time and give them separate family types. That's how you would do that. Okay. All right, looks like we've answered all the questions. All right, so with that, that's everything I wanted to share today. I'm going to go ahead and throw it back over to Marina. Marina, I think you're muted if you're talking.
Thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate that. Yes, and thank you everybody for coming today. And please make sure you're following us on all of our social media. We're especially active on LinkedIn and YouTube. And our YouTube page also has lots of great feature demos there. And Amber is making new ones every week. So thank you again for attending, and we will be following up with the recording. We'll see you all next month.
Real quick, Marina, before we go, there's one more question in the chat.
Yeah, let's definitely get to it.
Let's see. So Chris asked, where you put an insert on top of a hanger, is there a way to include a strap hanger? Not yet, but we're aware of that limitation. And so it's coming. It should be it should be in 7.0. We've got a release coming out soon, within the next 2 or 3 weeks. It won't be in there, but you can expect it to be in 7.0. All right, sorry about that, Marina.
No, that's great.
Wrap it up.
Thanks, everybody. And again, we'll see you at next month's Mechanical Update webinar.